I'm going to level with you here. Season 2 of Mushoku Tensei will be a production downgrade. Now, if that's all you wanted confirmation for, then feel free to click off of this video and continue doom posting about it, but for the rest of you who can tell that just calling this a downgrade doesn't really tell the full story, stick around because I want to do the best of my ability to explain what's going on here, why you might notice that there's a downgrade, and ultimately why, at the end of the day, everything is still going to be fine, and it all begins with a general overview of anime production as a whole. Mushoku Tensei Season 1 is what I like to call a Sakuga haven. It's one of those shows that is just filled with such ridiculously talented people within the core staff that it ends up bleeding into pretty much every visual aspect about the series. The direction, the animation, the backgrounds, the storyboards and compositing and character designs. This is an all-star team creating an all-star production. And I would say on average, you really only see 1 or 2 series like this every single season. Sometimes even less. Sometimes you have freak forces of nature like Fall 2022 where it's just filled with them, but regardless, there is no mistaking when you do actually see them because they truly stand out among the rest as genuinely incredible feats of the anime industry. And the caveat that usually comes with these series, these super productions filled with the best talents in the anime industry, is that for how rare these anime already are even existing in the first place, it's even more rare for these productions to continue on for multiple seasons while still keeping all of those same incredible staff members around. This is a fluctuating industry, and one thing you really just have to get used to is that no production is ever going to be a surefire thing. One of the biggest misconceptions I always see tossed around in this community is how success and popularity of an IP is what determines how good the production will be. Remember One Punch Man Season 1? It looks incredible, it's successful, they're making money. Why would any of these talented people working on this thing ever even think about leaving? And then they did. Not only did none of those people end up working on Season 2, but it even switched studios entirely. That's a bit of a different situation compared to Mushoku Tensei's, but the general idea is that there are so many more factors to where talent in anime coalesces. Sometimes you have super projects built to promote mega franchises and large shonen manga, and other times you get them in really small, niche passion projects that are led by maybe 1 or 2 really prolific people in the industry. They get financial backing, and then they call all of their talented friends to join up and make something extremely special out of something that really isn't that popular. However, there is another angle to all of this that is likely way more relevant to the specific situation with Mushoku Tensei, and it all has to do with scheduling. The anime industry is a busier, more oversaturated industry than it ever has been before. Anime in general is just skyrocketing in popularity, even among normal people in the West, and instead of consolidating resources into smaller catalogs of anime that can all be higher quality, the industry solution instead is to just make more of it. More and more and more of it. I genuinely can't think of a world where this much anime releasing on a seasonal basis is worth it, but that's where we're at right now. And because that's where we're at, unless you're Kyoto Animation where all of your talent is in-house working only on these projects that you are creating on a consistent basis, your staff are naturally going to be shuffling around a lot to different projects based on what meets their schedules and what meets the schedules of the producers who are bringing them into these projects. And that essentially leads us into one of the fundamental answers for this entire video. Why does Mushoku Tensei Season 2 look different? Why does it look worse than Season 1? Well, it's because people left. Onimai is an anime that just finished airing from the same studio that makes Mushoku Tensei, and one of the most notable things about it, other than the fact that it's the exact same type of Sakuga Haven series filled with some of the most talented people in the industry that I was mentioning earlier, more specifically than that, it's helmed by 2 people who had a large effect on the production of Mushoku Tensei, Shingo Fuji and Ryo Imamura. Look them up on Anime News Network if you want, but the gist is that they were two of the strongest staff members that Mushoku Tensei had at its disposal. They were responsible for some of the best looking moments and episodes from part 1 of the series. However, after part 1 was over, they mysteriously disappeared. Imamura did show up for one episode in part 2, which coincidentally that episode also ended up being one of the best looking episodes of the series, but other than that, it was only later on that we found out that the reason why they disappeared is because they were put in charge of an entirely different series within the same studio. Another example in this same vein is the character designer Kazutaka Sugiyama. This guy played a role not just in the character designs that fill Mushoku Tensei, but also in animation direction and supervision. These are all hugely important roles, but again, within that large break between part 1 and part 2 of Mushoku Tensei, this guy had to leave the production midway through to go do design work and animation direction on a little series called Chainsaw Man. And because of these staff changes, because of the way that this scheduling lined up for a lot of people, I don't think it's a hot take to say that part 2 of Mushoku Tensei visually did take a noticeable dip in quality and consistency compared to part 1. These are just a few of the many examples of how production scheduling will often have people leaving and moving around, which ends up leading to these downgrades. But there's one staff change in particular that I really want to highlight here, not just because it involves my favorite franchise of all time, but because it's without a doubt the staff change that will affect Mushoku Tensei the most, and it's the only one that I think normies are actually paying attention to. The director and series writer for Mushoku Tensei Season 1 is a man named Manabu Okamoto. And before Mushoku Tensei aired, I don't think a lot of people really knew about this guy. He had directed a series called Gamers, but other than that, it was mostly just a handful of episode direction credits. But on the other hand, I don't think many people would argue that the series direction in Mushoku Tensei was very, very strong, and that's not even considering how much work he had done with the composition and script for the series as well. So when you have somebody like this who is just so deeply entwined with the production of a series that tons of people love, suddenly leave that series to go direct an idol anime that is airing this season, I can genuinely understand why people would be confused and mad and scared from that happening. Which is why I tried my best to preface this video with a few of the reasons why these things can happen. No series, no sequel, no anything is ever a guaranteed thing within an entertainment industry. So many of these things can change and fluctuate and move around, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now. You can be mad all you want that this talented dude is leaving Mushoku Tensei to go direct Idolmaster, but if you take even a second to look at his works and the history of his career, you can see that he has always been a part of Idolmaster. He directed 3 incredible looking episodes for Cinderella Girls all the way back in 2015. Maybe that's why he was called in to come back, maybe the scheduling just worked out that way, maybe it's another reason that I don't even know about. The point is, there are so many variables that come into play for where these staff go and what they work on. And the real takeaway with all of this is that it's not always a bad thing. You guys should know by now how big of an Idolmaster fan I am, so this is coming from a place of deep personal bias, but Idolmaster U-149 is going to be absolutely incredible. Onimai was absolutely incredible. These are series that would have been just fine on their own. They have great stories, great characters, and great experiences to give, and yet it's that last boost, bringing in these people who care, people who are talented and passionate and want to make the most of these stories and elevate them as high as they can be. That is what really ends up making them into something special, and ironically, everything that I just said also applies to Mushoku Tensei. And that's really the more hopeful note that I want to get into, because I could go on and on about other Mushoku staff members who have moved to Idolmaster, or moved to that Kizuna Ai series, or moved to a very unfortunate bind animated NFT project. Don't even ask me. But instead, I want to talk about who is actually still here for Season 2, because I don't know about you guys. I know there's a lot of dooming in the community right now, which is why I wanted to make this video in the first place, but I really don't think that the Season 2 PV even looks bad. On the contrary, I think it still looks quite good and very in tune with the overall aesthetic of Season 1. And the reason I think that is because there's still a lot of that core team who are still working on Mushoku Tensei. The art director is the same, the director of photography is still the same, the studio creating all of those gorgeous Mushoku Tensei backgrounds I'm going to say is likely the same, color design, editing, music. I think it's pretty safe to say that this will still feel very distinctly Mushoku Tensei, and I think the biggest reason I can say that is because of its new director. Now, getting a director to fill in the shoes of somebody like Okamoto is never an easy task, but the best case scenario, the most logical route that you can go in a situation like this, is you get somebody who was still heavily involved with the directorial process. Hiroki Hirano is the new director for Mushoku Tensei Season 2, and I've seen a couple of people already write this guy off because they don't see anything notable in his credits, but I find that kind of absurd because the most notable thing of all is staring you right in the face. Not only does this man have a ton of episode direction credits that have likely helped him build up a great experience and portfolio, but he has already directed 5 episodes of Mushoku Tensei itself. This is somebody who was clearly very involved with the production of Season 1, and I really think it's going to translate to Season 2 maintaining its identity even in spite of the staff members who have left. So at the end of the day, I really do think Mushoku Tensei Season 2 is going to be just fine. Yes, it has lost some great staff members, yes, there will almost certainly be noticeable downgrades in some areas, but without a doubt there is still a great team of people working on this series, and I think a lot of fans are going to be feeling really silly in a few months when the anime starts and it looks completely fine. But that also leads into a bigger issue surrounding Season 2's production. Yeah, some good staff members left, but if for whatever reason Season 2 comes out and it's underwhelming, or there's clearly some areas where it wasn't polished the way that it could have been, I think it's going to have to do a lot more with this tight schedule that they're dealing with. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the anime industry is in a hyper state of overproduction. They just will not stop making anime at an absurd rate, despite genuinely not having the time or resources or manpower to actually make it all happen. This is why you probably hear about how goddamn awful working in this industry actually is, because the rate of anime is going so up, while the amount of people actually working on it is staying the same. That basically means longer hours, hellish work environments, and a pay that I don't think I even need to tell you is grossly minimal. Considering how long anime actually takes to make, the fact that the committee and executives behind this series are pushing to release this series by summer of this year, when it could easily release in fall or even winter and still be just as popular, just as successful, and turn out all the better for it, I find it absolutely absurd. Now don't get me wrong, I am not buying into these rumors of Season 2 being 30 plus episodes, or how they won't have any break in between the cores, because frankly, that just sounds unbelievable. That would turn an already pressured situation into a downright catastrophe. But even if those things aren't the case, there is no doubt that most of the production shortcomings that you will see in Mushoku Tensei Season 2 are because they simply are not giving Bind the time that they need to really polish the final result. It's an unfortunate reality of the industry. I pray that everyone working over there makes it through this relatively okay, but something really has to change. All of that being said though, just don't despair too much, guys. I know listening to all of this can be very scary and very overwhelming, and I do think it is important to learn about the industry. You should learn about the people in it, you should learn about the successes and shortcomings of these anime productions. Everything in this video, I hope, is good information to keep in mind when thinking about anime, but it's also important to just still be excited, to still look at this craft that these people are dedicating their entire lives to, and to not let some rumor mill or fear-mongering stop you from being excited about the next season of your favorite anime. I think Mushoku Tensei Season 2 looks great. I am so excited to see where this series goes in the future. I really don't think the staff are going to let us down, and at the end of the day, I think that's all that really matters. Join the Discord server in the description below, follow me on Twitter, watch Cinderella Girls U-149 starting this week, and get subscribed for all of my future videos. I love you all so much, and I will see you in the next video.